Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Michael MacBride. I'm joined by a dynamic trio of psychologists
Yeah.
today.
Trio. Hi, I'm Dr. Gayle MacBride. I am joined by Dr. Daniel Kessler, clinical psychologist, sleep expert, who politely reminds the world that running on caffeine and fumes is not a personality. Dan, welcome. But we are
Well,
very
it is.
excited to
It wait,
also welcome
Dr.
Dr. Dan
McBride.
Miller, who is a psychologist, executive leader, and now the founder of the Forward Collective. She has spent more than a decade helping high achieving women, working moms, and athletes untangle burnout, perfectionism, and identity issues. In other words, her superpower is being fluent in the language of I'm fine while secretly Googling how to disappear responsibly. Welcome, Megan.
It's so true.
Michael, do you have a
You having
conundrum
me?
for us today?
Well, Dan was trying to say something earlier. Do you want
No,
to?
no, no. I was merely going to object to caffeine and fumes not being a personality trait. I think I've done quite well with running on caffeine. No,
I mean, here's a psychologist joke. Like, is it a state or a trait?
Oh boy.
Um,
that may be a bonus question.
I'll take psychology nerd trivia for 500, Alex.
legit.
All right. Well, for any of the newbies out there, if you wonder what you're stumbling upon and you're unfamiliar with our podcast, in short, what I've done is I've gone out and I found a scenario online, and it's one of those things where someone has asked the internet, who's the asshole here? And they try to give the facts, but, anyway, we'll see what comes of it. And now I'm going to throw it to these three psychologists, and we'll see where they lay their verdicts or thoughts they have. Almost always some aspect about relationships. And in the post, I've tried to de-identify it a bit so that it's a little more discreet. Also, if you're new, stick around through the end. We always have some kind of bonus conversation, whether it is whatever they were just talking about as a non-psychologist. I'm not sure what that was, or something else. We'll see. But today's topic is, am I the asshole for defending myself against my boss criticizing that I'm eager to leave on time at the end of the day?
Ooh, this feels like a work culture conversation.
Mm.
Mm. These questions. I love the way these questions are sometimes worded with the we talked about before the idea of a push poll. When they do political push polls, they call you up and they're like, would you vote for this person if you found out that he liked eating cats? And it's like, oh my gosh. So they're trying so this question is sort of like that. Am I the asshole for defending myself against my boss's unkindness? But I'm interested in hearing the fact pattern.
There's got to be a whole psychology behind writing a hooky, kind of catchy topic like that, and how it predisposes you to judgment, I'm sure.
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah,
I'm judging I'm judging OP already for writing a question that is clearly intended to guide you towards their solution, the answer that they want.
for sure. Well, here's the rest of it. It says, I took a salaried position after being told the job would be fairly predictable: weekdays, normal hours, structured shifts, no constant on call or weekend demands. But after I started, my boss got access to my personal number from my resume and began calling me on nights and weekends,
No.
asking me to. I didn't even get through it all. And you're like,
All
nope,
right,
that's it.
all right. There's a mute button here somewhere in there.
Michael, can you mute him?
I probably could. That's all right. Nights and weekends asking me to come in or handle things immediately, often on very short notice. I pushed back, explaining I'd set boundaries and asked him to schedule extra shifts in advance, but he dismissed that, saying emergencies happen and I should just drop whatever I'm doing when needed. My coworkers also piled on pressure, criticizing me for refusing weekend work and claiming that it's part of the job, even though that expectation was never explicitly part of my contract. I've now started ignoring those off-hour calls and only responding within agreed upon business hours. That's caused friction. My coworkers grumble, my boss acts frustrated, and some argue that if everyone refused like I do, operations would break down. I feel stuck because I accepted this role under certain terms, and enforcing boundaries feels like I'm walking a tightrope between standing up for myself and being labeled hard to work with. I'm wondering whether I'm being unreasonable or if the problem is management overreach.
Do we know the industry of this person? Do we get to have that detail?
I'll look. I don't remember it being abundantly clear, and I also don't know the sex or gender of the person, but I'll see if I can find those for you.
That was gonna be my second question too.
Okay. I mean, it's an interesting question that you asked, because then it sort of presupposes that industry specific would make it okay or not okay. What's your take on that? I mean, it's a salaried position.
Yeah, it's a salary position. I don't know that it would make it okay or not okay. I
Based
think
on
there
the
could be
industry.
context there though,
Mhm.
right? Like they mentioned on call, which always like cues me up to like what type of, I think about, we've all worked in healthcare, right? There are
Mhm.
certain things that come with the territory that may require, our attention. And yet, um, even in that industry, I don't think on the regular, unless it was baked into your contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of problematic here, is this person seems surprised that this is an expectation. And it's not the first time I've heard someone feel sort of blindsided by then the and other duties as assigned kind of clause that sometimes exists in a personnel a position description.
Yeah. I mean, I was all ready to like say not nice things about OP here because they have framed the question the way they did. But I gotta say, like, I'm down with this. This is just this is the comments that some of the coworkers have made to this person is like you're leaving all this work for us. You're not being a team player. And what everyone seems to be missing is that it's the corporation's responsibility to be sure that they have coverage. And we frequently get people, like, if we don't ask the question, is this reasonable? Sometimes we just go along with stuff.
Hmm.
And this is one of
Yeah.
those situations where each person in the room hasn't asked themselves, is the emperor wearing clothes? Is this ask reasonable? And they've just kind of gone along with it because that's the culture and that's the way it's been. And now this new person walks in and they don't fit the culture.
Yeah. I find it so wild how accepting we are of this type of work culture. Like you said, Dan, like just kind of blindly accepting, like it's, because I could think of a million different industries where this would come, like tech companies, startups, like all those types of things where it really is just the embedded culture of hustle,
Mhm.
hustle, hustle. And so to be anything but in line with that culture sticks out. But to your point, like we don't ask the question of does this stick out in actually kind of a healthy way and in the direction we should be going, and maybe empowering people to be more vocal about their own boundaries. I think the thing that I heard in that post that kind of um, got me in my gut was that the fear of being labeled difficult to work with.
Hmm.
And the fact that, like, in the workplace, you can be setting really healthy boundaries, adhering to the agreement that was signed upon. And if you don't have, somebody from upper management or your superior or whatever who can make room for that, it can turn into a performance issue really fast, or an on paper
Yeah,
performance
Yeah.
right.
issue.
Because you're being difficult. And
Yeah.
really what that translates to is, like you said, boundaries, right? I'm
Mhm.
setting healthy boundaries.
And Michael, you have something.
I was just going to tell you. So in clarifying questions, they do say that the poster is male and the supervisor is female, and the industry is a consulting firm. So I don't know if that helps in anything. They don't specify what industry for consulting, but that's what they said there.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to jump in. I think we have some legal language that around salaried positions and not paying for overtime. And so now we've set this legal precedent where this person can't get compensated for any additional time because it's all just assumed under this salaried position. And I find people are reluctant to take salaried positions for this reason. If you're going to ask me to do all of these extra hours, where is that compensation? I always tell people, you have time, money, and expertise.
Mhm. I don't know if you all have noticed this, but I've noticed a bit of a difference in almost like interview trend, and not even the interview. It's like the negotiation process for a job. I've noticed kind of this up and coming um, generation is very specific in their negotiations, like asking really specific questions about like work hours and PTO. And like, I'm here for it. And I totally get it from the hiring manager point of view, where it's like, it's kind of that like legal piece of it too, right? Where it's like, well, yes, and
No,
right? Like,
I actually really like that. I remember when I was in a leadership role at a big company, and I was hiring someone, and during the interview, he said to me, I would like to start my week each Monday. I want to start like around 10, because I like starting my week with a good workout to kind of frame myself properly for the week. And, I will complete my hours for the week and do everything within the parameters. But I really like that first day of the week to start later than usual. Maybe 9. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. And I was like, like what an interesting interview question. Like, part of me was wondering, like, is this an interview question asked to see what our company's flexibility is, or is this just
Mhm.
is this like on the face? I took it on the face value. I'm like, yeah, yeah, that sounds.
Right.
I love the idea of good work-life balance. And I think that's something that perhaps my generation, and I like. I'm officially Gen X, but I sort of straddle. Like, I'm the first year of Gen X, and the Boomers were the year before me, and because I'm old. And I think that that's something that is really great about the millennial generation and Gen X or Gen Z generation. This greater degree of focus on my life outside of the workplace is really important to me, and I
Yeah.
think that I really appreciate that focus.
So the
I'd be
flip
interested in hearing
is
about this with
work to
Opie and
live
Boss.
versus live to work.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a big difference. And I think I'm technically of the millennial generation. I'm in that like little window of like the last group that grew up through the formative years without a cell phone. I'm the last, I'm the last one of those, whatever generation that is. But I remember on my practicum, um, there was an intern. So I was a practicum student, they were an intern, and she would leave on the dot 4 p.m. every day. No questions asked, no wiggle room. And I was a practicum student, like trying to impress, right? So I was there till like 8 p.m. doing who knows what, adding absolutely no value, but just like, but I'm here and I'm working really long hours. And do you see me doing that? And I remember asking her about it. And that was the first time I got some insight into this idea that if you hold the boundary, the culture around you will shape around that boundary. Especially if you bring quality work forward and are a valued contributor, then they're not going to want you to leave. They're going to respect your boundary because they want to continue to have your talent at their company. And sure enough, I would just kind of sit back and watch. And she was a phenomenal therapist. I think she still works there to this day, and I bet you she's still leaving at 4 p.m.
Well, that'd be
every
amazing.
single day. But it was such a like, that was never an original thought to me, to be
Right.
like,
And
hey,
how
it's a
often?
fun time.
And I don't know that corporations, like, I don't know of anyone who's been told by well, maybe occasionally, but very few people ever get told by the company they're working for, you're putting in too many hours.
No,
We get, oh,
Not U.S.
We're,
companies.
thank you so much for all the hard work you put in.
yeah,
And, we do. And Gail, you talked about like the purpose of a job. I love my work. I really do. I love being a psychologist. I love the work of a psychologist. But I freely admit that I come in because I get bribed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to set those boundaries around my work when I'm working for someone else. Now, I will tell you that my current boss, who's more, well, it's me and McBride. The
I was going to say shared leadership.
Yeah, they're a little harder on my hours and such than, especially myself, because like when working for yourself is tough because you got no one to blame when you miss the. But having worked for big companies, I've certainly made the mistake of at times not having those good boundaries, and I regret not necessarily always like, oh, I'm just going to go take care of this work that they give, without setting a good boundary. And learning how important that was from someone else was really helpful to me. And I did,
Mhm.
It's interesting because we are really talking about culture and leadership and management and I think that's so important. Megan, you were talking about working in an organization where this woman left at 4 p.m. and it actually harkened me back to my internship. And I was in a position where I got two very different messages at the same time from leadership. So leadership is not always on board and in sync with this. So my direct leaders would say to me, your work is done, go home, right? See
Mhm.
you tomorrow, Monday, like whatever. If your work is done, it's done, and we trust you. And at the same time, they had instituted a badge swipe and they had coded levels of employees. And
Oh
so
God.
doctoral level staff, and I think at that time I was probably an intern. Yeah, I was an intern, but we were considered to be the same level as the doctoral level staff. And so we were code zero, which was defined as very responsible professional. I am not making this up, but you still had to badge and
Mhm.
fingerprint in and out, and you had to keep the hours. So no longer did I have the flexibility of when my work was done because I had to sit there and like make shit up to do until, it was time
Yeah,
to
that's
go,
awful.
which is so demoralizing and so confusing when you're an early professional and trying to sort out like what kind of professional do I want to be here and what
Yeah.
do those boundaries look like?
And back to
Yeah.
OP,
Yeah.
I do remember my own internship, and when I was interviewing, they said, "Well, most interns are work about 50 hours. We always keep it under. We really keep it under 60, but I mean, probably it's going to be a 55 hour work
Mhm.
week as an intern here." And that was clearly stated, and I was well aware of it. And I think I was making minimum wage once you figured in the out. But I mean, that was
Been a
part of.
high paying internship then.
Well, it was 1995, and I was making $17,000 a year, work 55, 60 hours a week, whatever that is. Someone can figure that out. But I mean, that was a clearly stated work expectation
Mhm.
on the way in. They made it clear to me that that was the work expectation. I could have chosen to take it or chosen a different internship and chosen that. I did choose to work there. Um, but with OP, getting back to the question,
Question at hand. It's a good idea.
according to we will accepting his fact pattern that he wasn't given the information and is getting crap for leaving on time and setting boundaries. I'm on this guy's side. Um,
Can I massage the facts a moment?
well, of course we always do.
Right? So the massage fact pattern here in my head that I worried about when I heard the post that would make it less clear is we tend to fall on the side of OP is reporting as it actually happened. And through the process of the conversation, we often walk ourselves into this. But if I were OP and I really wanted to mask, my shittiness in this, I might post it and have a different flavor to it. So let's say now OP, what he's not explaining is that he is spending however much time to wrap up all the things, tidy the desk, and then just wait it out till the clock is turned over to like 4 o'clock or whatever time, that he's agreed to leave his desk. And, he's just waiting it out because you don't start something new. And in that case, I think maybe he is being shitty, and his coworkers are maybe looking at him going, "Well, dude, you can't just pack up and just wait for the clock to turn over because that's also really a crappy coworker thing to do." Or I can't take this meeting or start this thing because I'm leaving in a half an hour. So that would be my
Yeah.
massage
Or
fact
it's his
pattern.
like definition of end of the workday,
Yeah,
2:30 p.m. And he's just like,
yeah.
peace out. I've got pickleball, like
I'm,
I
I,
love
I'm,
good at pickleball. Thank you.
you know what? I'm going to do something rare for me and accept the fact pattern as stated, and just say that his coworkers have bought into a toxic culture, and the boss is pushing it forward, and that he's not an asshole.
I suspect you're correct. I just
I
wanted
could
to
be wrong.
throw out the possibility because part of our job here with such a limited amount of information is to make sure that we're not just passing judgment based on a strict set of facts. Like we have to open this up and consider lots of different possibilities.
well, I mean, I would agree probability wise, just you look statistically around the world at how many workplace cultures are probably in line with the facts as they are exactly laid out.
Right.
And the amount of people who probably resonated with that story that was told. Um, but I think the point is interesting, Gail. And the thing that I notice in a lot of work cultures that is what I don't like hearing is that it appears that the leadership style is really centered around like fear and shame, right? And that's how we're
Ooh.
going to like motivate you to work, right? Versus how do we teach more leaders and build more work cultures that are actually comfortable with accountability? Because accountability, you don't have to be a jerk to hold people accountable. And I think people, like really shy away from this like idea of accountability, but somehow we've gained comfort with fear and shame, which is a little odd. But like, I think like if we could build more of that into our work cultures, like, I mean, Brene Brown is just like the
Yeah.
quintessential, like, if you ever want words on how to hold somebody accountable and be like the nicest person in the world, just read one of her books. Like, she figured it out. But yeah, I think, that's the part that's like, I feel this kind of like ache of disappointment by the leader of just, if this work pattern isn't working in the context of your whatever industry you're in or the demands of the job or whatever, have a tough conversation, you know?
So it leads us beautifully into, so this person shows up in your office and they say, Dr. Miller, I'm really struggling at work. I feel like I'm in the middle of this push pull. I want to hold my boundaries. I want to have a life. I have a pickleball league. They're waiting for me to show up. And have this incredibly demanding boss. What do I do? Like, how do you talk someone through having that really tough conversation with a leader who leads with fear and shame?
Yeah. Um, I So I was trained as a child adolescent psychologist and spent many years working with kiddos and their families. And I would have these key conversations sometimes where it was just really clear that the kiddo had emotionally matured past their parent, right? And so they have now
Mm.
become the more emotionally mature person in the system.
Wow.
And
I love how
having,
I'm going to like interrupt you. I
yeah,
love how you said that they matured past their parent. That just
yeah,
Yeah. it,
resonates with.
it immediately made me wonder at what age my kids did that.
I'm
It
sorry.
had to have been past tween, but probably anyway.
Anyway,
I
Sorry.
thank
think,
you. That's so beautifully said.
Yeah.
yeah, thankfully, I still think I have my kids on emotional maturity, but math, they have all, including the 7-year-old, surpassed me.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah. Yeah. I definitely
like,
lost that
just,
battle. But the emotional maturity one, that I
yeah.
remember. I remember with one of my kids a moment when like, and he was a teenager at the time, and he said something to me. I don't remember the exact moment, but I remember thinking, "Wow, you handled this situation way better than I did."
Well, it might have just been your human that's coming out too. I mean, I'm still going to give you the benefit of the doubt on maturity. But the reason those conversations would stick out to me is because they're always really hard to have as a clinician, because you had to explain to this young child that, like, from here on out, you're going to be in a pretty vulnerable place because you're young, you have an underdeveloped brain, but
Mhm.
like, I need you to like hang in there with me because you're now kind of emotionally responsible for yourself and you can't depend on this person that you're supposed to depend on.
Mhm.
And so it's a reversal, right? It's a role reversal. And that can be really hard to navigate. And I see that same pattern in the workplace so many times where you end up in therapy having to work with, the employee who's like, I don't like that. I know this isn't proper leadership. I know this isn't the way this is supposed to go, whether I have language for it or not, right? That can be part of the therapeutic process, is like bringing words to that experience. Um, but having that conversation with them of like, okay, like, this is, you're seeing the skill set of your leader and we're noticing that it's subpar, right? And so we now need to get into a situation where, how are you going to navigate this knowing you've outgrown your leader, essentially? And I think this sounds like one of those situations. I think it's a rare occurrence that like a head to head kind of battle mentality with your, like, let me kind of prove you wrong, or let me show you why, or let me bring you these facts or articles or like whatever. I think that hits probably some insecurities for the leader. And then I think it just elevates the problem. So very concretely, what do I think that looks like? I think, one, it can look like, how do you maintain your boundaries and like stick to it if they're that important to you, and recognize and know that it's going to be uncomfortable, and how are you going to cope through that discomfort? And or two, starting to have the conversation of, what are your other options on the table if this culture isn't one that's going to be conducive to you're kind of fundamentally, it's,
Yeah. No, it's very well
Yeah.
said. And I think the follow-up conversation, if and when those people decide to leave those toxic work cultures, is what can I ask in the next interview so that I don't end up here again, right? I
Yeah.
don't make that same relationship mistake, which is so hard because in this case, OP feels really duped.
Yeah. And one of the problems here is OP is really stuck.
Right.
Because he can set his boundaries, but if the workplace doesn't accept them,
or
now
what
it's
if it's
job
like the
search.
big name, like the big company that looks really good on your resume and you just like want to stick it out for 2 years so that
Yeah.
you have the experience and then the world really opens up to you, sort of thing. I mean, there really are like some pros and cons, but I find that if you're able to identify and recognize like this culture is toxic in some capacity, but I'm choosing to stay here for like reasons 1, 2, and 3, right? Like I think that then managing that discomfort and or maintaining your boundaries in the process, I don't want to say easier, that I don't, because I don't think it's easy, but I think manageable, maybe manageable is the right word. It can be a bit more manageable.
Yeah, I think in that case, you also start to see the end point. This is not a forever situation. And I think that's really important when you're building hopefulness versus getting lost in helplessness and hopelessness, right? Is this cannot be permanent, it cannot be global. I
Yeah.
have to know that I have at least some agency here, including that decision to stay at maybe X name big company for a stepping stone purpose. I don't want to look like I'm job hopping, and I need my resume to look more thoughtful and more transitioned instead of herky jerky and reactionary.
Can
Can
we
I throw out a
render?
potentially controversial question?
Of course.
Do you think our OP guy needs a therapist or a coach?
Oh, wow. Maybe someone who can do both.
Yeah, I think I think
Raise your hand.
no, what sounds like he needs is he's asking the question like, gosh, am I the one am I like everyone else is telling me this and I'm the only one? And being in that place of being the only one who has a different position, like it feels wrong, which is causing him to question his own values. And I think there's an opportunity here for either a therapist or a coach to help him to kind of parse through and also help him to parse through the difficult decisions that the two of you have talked about. Like, yes, it's a bad situation. They're violating my boundaries. Do I want to stay? Do I want to go? How do I want to navigate this situation now that I've identified this very clear problem that isn't working for me? And I like that spending the time with him doing that really thoughtful work, whatever that is.
All right. So Dan, you started to suggest we should render a verdict.
I
Is
think
he an
he's not.
asshole?
No.
I
No.
think yes.
Yeah, no,
No.
I think we've talked around this enough to all agree. We don't think, as stated,
As
that this
stated.
person is the asshole. We do have some significant concerns about leadership and third party minor characters here. The coworkers also, just going along and not questioning, is this reasonable?
I see the third party characters here, as we often refer to them, um, as like victims of a system. Maybe not victims is too strong a word, but like they have bought into a system that I don't think they're assholes. I think they bought excuse me, I think they bought into a system that's toxic or damaging. Um, and what might end up happening, I could also see, like, as we massage the facts here, the other coworker going, wait a second, I can set boundaries at the workplace and not answer my phone on a Saturday. I saw another discussion about something similar to this online a while back, and one of the suggestions was just answer the phone and say, sorry, I've had a few beers. It's not appropriate for me to work today. So I'm not.
I mean, to like behaviorism though, right? Like if they're calling and texting and they're not getting like a response, like eventually
Yeah.
that'll figure out. They
Yeah,
might not
you'll
be
get
happy about it, but
you'll get
Yeah.
some you'll get a little extinction. First, they'll get the
Little
extinction
extinction,
burst, right? The increase in behavior. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity here for, like, I just and I'm interested in what the internet says. We all said he's not an asshole.
Oh man, this was a wild one. So
Really?
I really enjoyed this one. I mean, this was and mainly one of the side conversations that kind of comes out of the big thread. So the most common populist response was there are no assholes here. I know, but this is the logic. It was you accepted this job with what you thought was in good faith and that they told you what it was. They hired you with a common understanding of what the job was. Maybe they didn't communicate that to you well, but now they've tried to communicate that to you and you're ignoring that. And then the culture of the workplace is such that like the coworkers are just like, what the hell? Like someone needs to pull the weight here. So ultimately the internet said no assholes here. Now,
No, I disagree.
Wow, the
I've done
internet's wrong.
hiring. I have done hiring. And when I have never hired someone for any job where I did not clearly and explicitly state the expectations in terms of hours, time put in, on call or evening time. I've never done a hire without that, and I've never interviewed for a job where I've not asked the question. So
Well,
I'm going to
and so
respectfully disagree.
yeah, I think the internet is wrong. I'm not sure who I'm talking to when I reference the vastness of the internet, but I'm happy to tell them they got this one wrong. Um, However, I will say I think there is perspective, and I can see where people are kind of bouncing between perspective. And this is whenever I was hiring, and I just like really, really, really encourage anybody who's in a hiring position to hire for a good match, not to just fill a seat. Because if you're just hiring to fill the seat, it's going to backfire every single time. Like if you find yourself trying to sell the position to somebody, that should be a red flag that maybe you don't have a match there. Just be honest about the work, what the work is, what the place is. If it's a 65-hour week and there's nights and weekends and like, crisis management that comes up, just say it, because you ultimately want the person who can handle that and who will go in eyes wide open, and not be caught off guard by that. You save yourself the turnover and all the money that comes with turnover. I think that's probably one of the best things people could do as a hiring manager is be patient and find the right match versus try to fill things quickly. And I think we do a disservice sometimes when in these bigger corporations where you have recruitment functions that are like their metrics of success are how fast can you fill a vacancy,
Right.
right? And
No,
and,
and
so the
I could see
motivator I
that.
think is off sometimes.
I could see that being exactly the reason why we have this culture, but we didn't share it with our candidate, and now they're here. And oops, no, you failed as a leader and as a hiring manager to say exactly what was expected here.
Yeah, and I'm
Yep.
not willing to say the hiring manager is an asshole. But I think the hiring manager failed to handle this correctly, or the boss, whoever did the hiring, failed to do this. And I'm going to disagree with the internet because I'm not letting them all off the hook.
Yeah.
So one of the more interesting pieces here that, well, at least to me, it was the conversation that the internet then descended into, and it had a lot of people who said like, I'm a CEO, I'm a whatever, blah blah, right? C-suite people, and they all said like, salary means you do whatever the job requires, and by posting that it's a salary position, there is an assumption that goes with that, and you should know what that means. And you did a shit job of doing your research and understanding what that is when you applied for the job. And I was just like, wow, I never really thought about that before, but
I
it was
mean,
kind of interesting to hear people defend that.
I know that this has been kind of commonly growing in a variety of industries, and I think it's continuing to participate in a really toxic idea of what it means around having a worker and what you are buying when you buy their time at a salary. I think we have it wrong.
yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And there are, I mean, I've known people. My wife's in software stuff, and there are times when like we have a launch coming up or there's a product release coming up and there's going to be some extra time, but that's both well known in the field, and it's well known and predicted within the job that this is going to happen. The as part of the interview, like, yes, we're going to have times when we're going to need to do work at other hours because this all of that is spelled out both in sort of the conventional wisdom in the field and that person's specific role and in that specific job. And I do think it's beholden. And yeah, the OP, I mean, the responder is correct. Like a salary job means you do the job, and at the same time, like there's reasonableness and rationality here that I think is being violated.
Mhm.
Well, and I think you have to get to a place of mutual respect and mutual trust. And if you can't build that in your culture, salary really isn't doing you any sort of favors, right? We know salary is like really helpful for well-being in terms of like obviously predictable income really helps people in their lives. I think the idea of flexibility that, you can step away for your kids' doctor's appointments or your own doctor's appointments or whatever, and that there's, you're not clocking in and out or fingerprinting in your case scale to like getting rated, but at the same time, I don't think it's like a free pass to take advantage of people's time and assume that because they're on salary, you then are beholden to all of the hours of their day. Like they are still a human outside of this job. And I think to have, to build good communication and have mutual respect and have mutual trust where you can have open conversations of like, the fact that like, I think it's very telling in kind of a comical way, but also a really sad way that you can jump on Amazon and get a little contraption that can shake your mouse so that it appears as though you're online because there are cultures out there that like you can't even go yellow on your team status because that like someone will see that or like I always wonder like what's going to happen if it turns yellow, like what's that, but um I just don't see cultures moving forward unless there's a willingness to like almost like assume good intent of the other people. If you're not in a place of being able to assume good intent of your employees or your leader or your colleagues, like that should beg some questions.
I will add one more thing, which there's hope for a change of this thing, I guess, whatever we want to call it, that work culture. And our oldest son is doing college visits. And one of his professors that we spoke with said, I fight against crunch culture. Crunch culture looks like this. You are hired to do a job in this amount of time. And then it's like, oh, sorry, we need to meet the deadline. Like now you have to work 50 hours. Like you get trapped in this thing. And once you do it once, you're willing to do it again. And so one of the things he actively teaches in all his classes is how to fight that, how to set those boundaries and how to establish like what is reasonable or not. And I was like, oh man, that's amazing.
No, I love that because yes, it's setting the boundary early. And this is true for like all sorts of things. When we have boundaries, we need to set them and stick to them in order for them to hold. Because when we're porous with our boundaries early on, in any relationship, work relationship, whatever, it becomes an expectation.
Yeah. Well, thank you all three for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, morality is often, and I'll butcher the Clash song, but whether you should stay or go.
Oh boy.
I want to sing, but that would be problematic for our listeners.
Please follow and share Veritas Views, any of the podcast platforms with your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits. We'll have some kind of bonus conversation.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
At the beginning, we were chit-chatting a little, and Dr. Miller, you talked about coming back to address, I think, kids in sports or parents in sports with their kids. What was it what do you want to say about that, or what's important in the space? This is a good conversation, just given your breadth of experience.
So true. So part of what motivated me nudged me, pushed me right off the cliff of starting my business. Take your metaphor. Is I feel like there's these two populations where it's like, it's not going well. And I'm like, is anybody paying attention? Like, is anybody watching? Because I think we have a problem on our hands. And one of them is just this idea of like career oriented, high achieving women in particular, trying to figure out how to be all the things without quieting their voice. And I think that is a struggle. And especially as women progress in their leadership, you just see some concerning patterns of rises in anxiety, depression, sleep issues. I mean, you guys know all the things, right? And then their peer network shrinks because you're getting into the C-suite. You can't, you don't have that shoulder-to-shoulder colleague to rely on. So that was one big one. But the other one is around youth athletics, where you watch this, I mean, to what we were talking about, you watch this culture play out on these fields, and it's kind of horrifying. And then you watch just, everything's a business, right? So then you watch this and you think about it through the lens of a business, and it's like, it feels like the train is moving so fast in this direction of increased pressure, increased performance. The parents are starting to buy into it. The product they're selling is this idea that like, every kid is a prodigy, and they're almost like monopolizing that mentality. So then these parents really get invested into it, wanting to live the dream. They're probably like playing out their ESPN documentary, like on the sidelines. It's like their kid is playing. And I think what it starts to like bring out in people is just, I don't know, just like some concerning parent-child dynamics, right? Like somehow you get on the sideline and it's this permission to like use this tone or say these things to your kids, where it's like, maybe
Really?
it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know this because you were an athlete at a young age. So like you've seen this space change over your lifespan then. This is really something that's sort of remarkable for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been immersed in this world for like ever. I was a gymnast since I was like walking probably. And then I coached that sport for a really long time, a very mentally heavy sport, right? Like you got to be somewhere else in your mind to start removing your hands from the situation on a 4-inch beam, 4 feet in the air. Like you're somewhere else. But then, my brother is a head football coach at a D1 university. My other brother is in the NIL space. And so you look at like the collegiate sports as an example. So now these kids are kind of being raised, like pressure is increasing. The money that is getting poured into youth athletics is mind-boggling. But so it's going up and up and up and up. And now these kids are going through this almost like identity fusion process where they are becoming their sport. Then they go through major life transition and go to college. For a lot of them, it's like most people in college, right? It's your first time away from home, first time independent living. But now you've also gone from like being big fish at high school to little fish at college, these kids who are scholarshiped, now you're a freshman, you're back at the bottom of the totem pole. It's very disorienting for kids. And so the NCAA has put best practices in place, and they're now requiring certain level of support via therapists in their athletic department. But a lot of times, it might be like pre-licensed folks, or their access is really poor because they have to cover the entire athletic department as one person. And so you see some of these kids go through some really difficult mental health challenges. It's no surprise that when they do the research and pull out the data, diagnoses are on the rise, suicides on the rise. But then the part that really concerns me, like, I think NIL is really controversial. Do you guys know what NIL is?
I don't know. I'm going, please define this term.
Yeah. Mike, you might have to like double check. It's name, image, and likeness, I believe is what it is. So
sure.
essentially college students now can get paid for their name
Yes.
being used to, make the college money, which I think is like totally fair. Like if they're going to use you as their moneymaker, like you should get a cut of that, right? Where I see a problem is we are now, you see that these kids are in a major developmental shift. Their brain is going through like massive transformation. I'm not going to say they have poor decision making, but I'm also going to say that their decision making skills are currently transforming and sharpening. And now we're putting like millions of dollars in their hands.
Right.
And it, and then you pull in like family dynamics, friend dynamics, my question back to the NCAA is, what education are we giving these kids as we put the money in their hands that's preparing them both financially, but also from a mental health point of view to
Hopefully,
navigate
yeah, hopefully better than the professional sports leagues have done over the years with financial advice. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
know. Yeah.
Really good observations. I feel like you have done such a good job of articulating some of the things that float in my head, but I wouldn't have had quite the same words for all of that. So I really appreciate your take on that. I'm glad that you and the Forward Collective are out there helping people make better choices for their
Yeah.
mental health. Thanks again for
Agreed.
being with us. This was
thank
a
you so much.
delight.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for tuning in, everyone else. Tune in again next week for a whole nother Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.